On today's episode, Terance Mann. I haven't gone into him too much yet in these podcasts, but I'm going to tell you why he's going to be one of the key factors if the Clippers are going to win the championship. And Norman Powell has one of the highest odds for Sixth Man of the Year. I'm going to tell you why those odds may be a little complicated and why it could be a little bit tougher than you think on today's Locked On Clippers.
You are Locked On Clippers, your daily Los Angeles Clippers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, sir. You are locking in with the Clips. Thank you for making Locked On Clippers the first listen of your day, your team every day. I'm your host, heading into my 18th season as a Clipper fan, Darian Vaziri. Also have my own YouTube channel where I talk about LA basketball games after they happen, LA or sporting events, and vlog them when I go, and NBA content and NBA history content. Tonight, if you're listening to this on Monday, I'm going to be going live on my YouTube channel and talking about every single team in the NBA briefly, kind of giving my season preview, so to speak. But for today's episode of Locked On Clippers, I am going to be talking about Terance Mann and why I think that he is not only can he not be taken out of the rotation or not play in games, he needs to play games and he will have a significant role in those games throughout the season and deep into the playoffs if the Clippers are capable of getting there. As we saw in many playoff games of the past, he has a knack for the big occasion, and I'll tell you why that is. And I'm also going to be talking about Norman Powell's Sixth Man of the Year chances and why I think they're a little bit more complex than you might think. And then I'll probably end it off with John Wall, Reggie Jackson, who I think, just based off what I've heard recently, is going to get that starting spot on Thursday for the opener against the Lakers. But let's start out with Terance Mann. So Terance Mann, a 6'6" wing player, or 6'5", but his long arms make him look 6'6". Wing player. We've seen him play a little bit of point guard at times for the Clippers, but his real value comes on the defensive end. And one thing the Clippers have really struggled with, especially in the 2021 season, it really seemed like it was at the forefront, and that was quicker guards. Clippers did not have fully switch everything personnel like they're going to have this season, and guys have to play the pick and roll straight up, and that means fighting over the screen. And when guys are a little bit smaller, you had your Patrick Beverleys, your Reggie Jacksons, it's harder to get over screens and deter these ball handlers. So it would put Zubac in an uncomfortable position of having to play two guys at once at times, and then that makes him look bad. But Terance Mann, when he started to finally get consistent minutes, you saw a little bit of a shift. And you saw that the Clippers have a true point of attack defender that is going to make life tough on guys, and he did exactly that. And you saw that in the playoffs against various teams. And even though the Clippers' number one primary source of stopping guys this season, and you've seen the best of them in the past, is to switch everything personnel, I think there are going to be times this season where the Clippers are just going to want Terance Mann to guard the best player on the other team point blank. Especially in lineups with Ivica Zubac in, where you're going to be switching the other matchups, the 1 through 4, or at least 2 through 4. But when Zubac gets put in the pick and roll, you're not going to switch him on everybody. And I think Terance Mann is going to be charged with guarding the best player on the other team on a lot of occasions, and especially when he's in the game, he's going to start possessions guarding the best player on the other team. And in the starting lineup for the Clippers, I've talked about with Marcus Morris Sr., yes, they're going to switch 1 through 4. I mean, if Reggie Jackson starts, they're going to try to attempt to switch 1 through 4, but I'm not fully sold on Reggie Jackson's ability to guard bigger wings. So, let's say we use the first game, for example, LeBron James. If LeBron gets Reggie Jackson on a switch, that's barbecue. I know we're going to double him, and the Lakers don't have as many shooters, so that's not a terrible idea, but it can still be a little problematic always having to play help defense and leave a guy open. And if Reggie Jackson switch on a LeBron James, that could be a concern. So I'm not fully sold on Reggie Jackson's ability to switch on to everybody, especially if he starts, just like Ivica Zubac. But the 2 through 4, Paul George, Kawhi Leonard, Marcus Morris, I don't know if I'm really comfortable with them playing so much one-on-one defense against elite players to start games. Even though it's just to start games, you know teams are going to try to attack certain guys. And Marcus Morris, even though he has shown great stuff so far in the preseason, I think teams are going to try to go at him, especially in that lineup. They're going to act like he's the weaker link. Actually, not in the starting lineup, but when the Clippers go switch everything, they're going to try to target Marcus Morris like he's the weaker link. In the starting lineup, it's going to be Zubac and Reggie targeted and pick and roll. And if I were another team, as crazy as this sounds, I would try to make Kawhi Leonard guard my best player a lot to try to wear him out on defense and see how much he still got in terms of his defensive ability one-on-one. But the point is, you're not going to see Kawhi Leonard and Paul George guarding the best players to start games, at least starting possessions guarding them. They'll get switched on to them and stuff. But I don't want them to get too tired out, and I know the coaching staff doesn't want that. So that's why I really think that when the bench unit comes in, you're going to see Terance Mann have a lot of success guarding better players in the other team, because not only is he another just good on-ball defender to have for the switch everything scheme, but when the Clippers don't want to switch and they really want to clamp down, or I shouldn't use the word really want to clamp down, but when they really don't want to give the offensive player, usually the best player on the other team, the switch that they want to get, then Terance Mann is going to fight over screens and use his long arms and tenacity to deter guys. And the reason why I say he's going to be such a big factor for the Clippers this season is because you can't get enough of guys that are going to be able to guard your best players, the other team's best players, at a high level. Andrew Wiggins became and blossomed into the second best player on the Warriors in this past postseason run because of that very thing. His ability to guard the best players on the other team. And the Warriors, I think, did a really good job of being strategic with the way that they played certain guys. They would switch a lot, but they wouldn't switch every single thing. Where they wouldn't give Luka Doncic, guys like Steph Curry on a switch. They would make sure Andrew Wiggins fought. They hedged, recovered. They played drop coverage at certain times. They're very strategic about it. And one thing that's going to be good about the Clippers is even when they don't switch everything, when they don't switch everything, when they either hedge or blitz the screens or play drop coverage with Zubac, they're going to have enough length on the perimeter and wings all over the court that they're going to be able to rotate and make up that distance a lot better than a lot of other teams. And Terance Mann is part of that as well. But again, it goes back to being able to guard the best players on the other team, and I think Terance Mann's our best point of attack defender, and I think that that's the reason why he will not be just thrown to the wayside or slide down, because if you listen to my last podcast, and when I say slide down, I mean slide down the bench, meaning that when the Clippers are fully healthy, because remember, if only one of them is out or one player in the 11-man rotation is out, then it's not going to be an issue. But when the team is fully healthy, so let's say opening night, I think all 11 of the guys will play. But for one, Terance Mann's minutes are going to decrease. I mean, last season he averaged 28.6 minutes a game. I think that's going down to around 22, if that. But because, of course, Kawhi Leonard is a forward and a wing player, and he's back. And Paul George missed 51 games. And then, of course, you have Norman Powell. And the thing about Terance Mann is that's going to hold him back from these lineups is his ability to make shots. I talked about that in the last episode when I said two things to look for each player. Terance Mann needs to make shots, needs to make his mid-range, needs to knock down his open threes, but it's the intangibles that keep him on the court. The defense, the hustle, the rebounding, the movement without the ball, the cutting. That's the stuff that even if your shot's not falling, you can always make an impact in the game, and that's why Terance Mann come playoff time will be more valuable than a Luke Kennard. Despite his insane sniping ability that Luke Kennard has, Terance Mann's ability to guard different guys, be really good in transition, and just defense. Again, it really all comes down to defense. In the playoffs, you want to have as many great defenders as humanly possible, and Terance Mann is a really good one, and I think he's going to be huge for the Clippers this season, even though people think that he's going to get a lot less minutes. And you know what? He may get less minutes. He will. But I still think he's going to play a very pivotal role, and in the playoffs, he's going to be even better. You saw him in Game 7 against the Mavs. He was huge. That was his best game in the series. And, of course, the best game of his career came the night the Clippers needed it most. And for that, we are eternally grateful and can't wait for a new season of Terance Mann. But coming up, a new season of Norman Powell. Will he win Sixth Man of the Year? Are there things holding him back from that? Going to be talking about that coming up. Do you ever make subscriptions to various streaming services and forget that you even subscribe to them and get your monthly charge without even knowing? Are you wasting your money on them? 80% of people have subscriptions they forgot about. Maybe for you, it's your unused Amazon Prime account or Apple TV or Hulu that never gets streamed. But there's this great app I use that helps me track all of my expenses. And because of it, I'm no longer wasting money and know exactly which apps I still am subscribed to and which I'm not. You might have heard of it. It's called Rocket Money. The app shows all your subscriptions in one place and cancels what you don't want for you. Rocket Money can even find subscriptions you didn't know you were paying for. You may even find out you've been double charged for a subscription. And to cancel it, all you have to do is press cancel, and Rocket Money takes care of the rest. Cancel unnecessary subscriptions with Rocket Money today. Go to rocketmoney.com/lockedon. Seriously, it could save you hundreds per year. That's rocketmoney.com/lockedon. All right. Back and going to talk about Norman Powell for a second. So his odds for winning Sixth Man of the Year are fairly high, and or at least in the top 10 on BetOnline, of course. But I think this is going to be a little bit more complicated than people think. So right now, here are the odds. You have Jordan Poole first, and Norman Powell is actually second favorite on BetOnline to win Sixth Man of the Year at plus 650. And I'm going to tell you why I think that that's a little bit tough. So obviously, a big thing for the Clippers this year is going to be load managing certain players, whether it's Kawhi, whether it's Paul George, whether it's John Wall. The starting lineup is set to be Kawhi Leonard, Paul George, Marcus Morris, Ivica Zubac, and either one of Reggie Jackson or John Wall, which means that Norman Powell, considering I've said that I think he's going to be the third best player on the team, will be the clear-cut sixth man off the bench for the Clippers. But if John Wall also comes off the bench with him and Reggie Jackson is chosen as the starter, then that's going to make Norman Powell's job as for winning sixth man a little bit tougher. And let me just make this clear. It doesn't matter for the Clippers if he wins sixth man of the year. It doesn't. That's an individual goal. We here at Clipper Nation and Locked On Clippers, or should I say me, I don't care at all about individual goals. I care about the team goal, and that's to win the championship and to get 60 wins in the regular season. And Norman Powell winning sixth man of the year, by all means, if he does, it's going to be great. But here are two reasons why I think it'll be tough. One, what I just said, John Wall also sharing that bench unit with him. If he does, that's going to take a lot of the ball away from Norman Powell. And even though I think he's going to still get buckets and still create and pick and roll a bit, John Wall is arguably even better than him, which obviously I didn't say that a couple weeks ago. You know that. But after seeing John Wall in preseason, he does add some things that Norman Powell doesn't have. I mean, he's John Wall. He still has that passing ability. He still has even more burst than Norman Powell. Has the most burst off anyone on the Clipper team. So that's one reason. The main reason, though, why I don't think Norman Powell is going to win sixth man of the year and why I think Jordan Poole will probably win. However, this also applies to Jordan Poole in ways if Steph Curry's load managed a good amount, and same goes for Klay Thompson, is let's say Kawhi Leonard is sitting out, right? So I think Kawhi Leonard's sitting out the Sacramento game, the second game of the regular season on Saturday. This upcoming Saturday, I think Kawhi Leonard will sit out and then play on Sunday against the Phoenix Suns because two things. One, it's a better game against the bigger team. And two, it's the home opener for the Clippers. So I think Kawhi Leonard's going to want to play in that, and I think the organization is going to want their main man to play in that. But let's say we go to Sacramento, right? Who's going to start in place of Kawhi? Now, there are a couple options. You could go with Nico Batum to try to make up the length and have Nico, Marcus Morris, and Paul George out there, which is not a bad idea, honestly, because I'm a big fan of Paul George being the shooting guard in the starting lineup. So I honestly think that, and especially when we've seen Nico Batum and Marcus Morris play together, that could, if that's the replacement starting five, then I think Norman Powell's sixth man of the year chances are still very strong. But I think there's a good chance they could go with Norman Powell in the backcourt just because with Kawhi Leonard out, we're missing that scoring punch, and they want to bring Norman Powell in for some creation. Now, I think it really depends on this. If Reggie Jackson's starting at point, I think they're likely to bring Norman Powell in because just Paul George, Reggie, and Senior being the creators, I think the only two of them that'll create for others really Reggie and Paul George. So bringing in another guy that can create for others with Norman Powell is an idea. But now that I'm thinking about it, If John Wall ends up starting, I think Norman Powell stays on the bench and they just start Nico Batum. Because, again, I liked keeping the size intact, the three wings thing with Marcus, with Paul George, and either Nico or Kawhi. I really like that. They can all switch, and it just gives the Clippers size and length. But, yeah, I think the reason why I'd say I'm a little hesitant about Norman Powell winning Sixth Man of the Year is because, especially if the Clippers actually do get injured, he's going to start. And I think that maybe he'll start too many games to eliminate him from that conversation. But now that I'm realizing the circumstances and the potential options, I think there's a good chance Norman Powell stays put on the bench. If if Paul George misses a game, then it's a real dilemma. Because what, do they slide Kawhi down to the 2 and just start Nico Batum, do the same thing, put Nico in? Or do you go with Norman Powell and then Kawhi, Leonard, Marcus Morris, and Zoo? I think if Paul George misses a game and Kawhi plays, I think Norman Powell will start. And then I think that Norman Powell won't start when Kawhi misses a game. When Kawhi misses a game, it'll be Nico Batum in that starting lineup or Robert Covington, in my opinion. So, you know what? Norman Powell's odds to 6 man are still high, but I think that's something to be cautious of. If the Clippers load managing makes Norman Powell get inserted into the starting lineup, thus taking away some of his chances to win 6th Man of the Year. Just something to look out for. But coming up, I'm going to be talking about the final say on the point guard decision, Reggie Jackson, John Wall, what I want to see opening night. And I'm going to be talking about that coming up. Jordan Poole is plus 400 to win 6th Man of the Year. Norman Powell plus 650, not far behind. And Malcolm Brogdon at plus 700 right behind him. If you want to make or place a bet for the 6th Man of the Year, opening night, or any sporting event, you got to go to betonline.net. It's your number one source for all your basketball, football, baseball, betting info this season. Find all the latest player developments, podcasts, team matchups, news, in-depth articles, and analysis on every game you can find. And as always, BetOnline remains your continued source for all your sports wagering information with live betting and up-to-the-minute scores for every sport out there. The MLB playoffs are in full swing. Rest in peace to my Dodgers. But the NLCS between the Padres and the Phillies is starting very soon. And the AL divisional playoffs are still in progress. Place your bets on that. And, of course, the World Cup in a month. Can you believe it? Place your bets on that as well. Just remember to head to betonline.net or use your mobile device to learn more. Bet online, where the game starts. Okay. So the final thing I'm going to be talking about today, Reggie Jackson, John Wall. Now, there was a report that Reggie Jackson, and by Chris Haynes of Yahoo, who's pretty credible, and he has, people in the know, that Reggie Jackson is expected to be named the starter for the Clippers on Thursday against the Lakers. And then Ty Lue came out and said, I don't know where they got that report. I'm thinking about it. So he's clearly putting a lot of thought into it. If I had to place a bet, I know I said John Wall a couple weeks ago, and I keep flip-flopping. I know, I'm sorry, guys, that I keep flip-flopping. But I'm going with Reggie Jackson because he keeps saying fit over player. And while I don't think John Wall is a bad fit for the starting lineup, I think he's seeing that John Wall wants the ball and has a lot of ability on the ball. And I think he's going to want to use that with the second unit and then obviously play John later in the game with the starters and Kawhi Leonard and Paul George. And I think, again, I've said this many times, but closing games is more important than starting games. So what that lineup will basically be dependent on how the game is going, the game flow, who's having a better game. That's what matters. But to start games, it's not really that big a deal. I think John Wall does give you more stability on defense, especially with that switch everything scheme. I mean, you can probably switch 1 through 4 on that with John, Kawhi, Paul, and Marcus Morris. As long as John Wall can hold his own against bigger wings, and he's stronger than Reggie. Reggie can get overpowered against bigger wings. But one thing I like about Reggie is playing with that starting lineup is not only has he played with all those guys for multiple seasons now, for multiple seasons now, the catch and shoot looks that he can get from Kawhi and Paul George early in the game could be huge for his confidence and could get him going and then gives him the ability to create some of his own and make the Reggie magic happen that we've become so accustomed to here at Clipper Nation. So Reggie Jackson starting alongside them, I think is going to be a good fit for his shooting. I just think he needs to hold his own on defense, especially if the Clippers want to switch 1 through 4, because if teams are smart, they're going to put not just Ivica Zubac in the pick and roll, but also Reggie Jackson in the pick and roll. So, and again, I've been saying Reggie Jackson from the start, but John Wall's impressed me so much that I want to see him start, because I think he just offers the Clippers a different element that they haven't had with that downhill speed, both in the half-court set and in transition, with trailers like Paul and Marcus Morris on the wings for threes. So I really like that ability that he has, and I think he has a point to prove, and it's going to be really more intense on defense than Reggie Jackson. But in the opening night, I expected to see Reggie Jackson, and I'm not tripping off of that either, because Reggie Jackson has done some damage to the Lakers in the last year or two, especially last season. So seeing him alongside Kawhi and Paul George, and plus, Kawhi, I think Reggie Jackson will also be on ball a little bit more than I'm advertising here in this podcast with Kawhi Leonard, because even though I can see the Clippers, the first couple possessions, kind of going to Kawhi Leonard against the Lakers just to see how he feels, test him out, and show everybody that, you know what, he's here. It also could be the alternative side of that, which is they slowly ease Kawhi into the game, meaning with touches and stuff, and let Reggie Jackson and Paul George handle the ball a little more in the first quarter of the opening game of the season against the Lakers. So, something to look out for. If I had to place a bet right now, I'm going to go with Reggie. I am. Not necessarily what I want, but not necessarily something I care about too much. As I said, it's all about finishing. And speaking of something, well, you know what? It's not anything to do with finishing or news, so I shouldn't have said speaking of something. But the Clippers announced today they're coming out with something known as Clipper Vision. And even though this is not part of the originally scheduled program, I think that it is worth talking about, being that this is the only 5-day-a-week Clipper podcast. The only 5-day-a-week Clipper podcast. So you need all your news about the Clippers. And one of those is that they are bringing in something known as Clipper Vision. And it was announced this morning, actually, Monday morning. And it's even more expensive than NBA League Pass. I just want to say that right off the bat. $199 a season. And Steve Ballmer's in charge of it all. And he wants to change the form of NBA broadcast delivery. And he has several different streaming ways. So here's what it says. Clipper Vision, a streaming service customers can purchase to watch Clipper games directly without a cable subscription. So for all you guys that don't have cable, don't have access to Bally Sports Plus, don't have access to KTLA, this app offers 6 different live streams per game from Bally Sports feed with Brian Seaman and either Jim Jackson and Mike Fratello, the normal feed. They also have live commentary versions in Korean and Spanish, an augmented reality mode, and the so-called Baller Vision, which is going to feature multiple guests talking and commentating on the game while it's happening, such as Jamal Crawford, one of your favorites, one of my favorites, Baron Davis, Quentin Richardson, Matt Barnes, Paul Pierce. I wouldn't be surprised if you see Darius Miles there at times as well. So that's going to be like the fourth and final piece of the broadcast package this season. And of course, remember, 11 games are going to be on KTLA 5. So for people that just have basic cable, they're going to be able to get that as well. So this is what the Clippers are going with, something called Clipper Vision. It's going to be a little different. But if you want to get it, just go get it. $200. Just Steve Ballmer trying to find more ways to make the viewing experience more attractive for the fans. But that's it for me today, guys. A little bit shorter today, I know. But don't worry. It's going to get real very soon. This week, it starts. Tomorrow, when you hear the new pod, it's going to be opening day. For many people like myself, you can also call it better than Christmas morning. Remember to subscribe to Locked On Clippers on YouTube. It's the fastest way to grow the channel. Let's get to 900. We are currently in 29th place among the 30 NBA teams in Locked On Podcast, surpassing the Spurs, but we need to climb up to 1,000 to compete with the other teams. And this season, we are going to have one of the best teams in the league, so there's no reason why we shouldn't have one of the highest subscriber counts of any Locked On NBA podcast. So for today's pinned question, I am asking you, do you think Terance Mann will play a bigger role than Luke Kennard this season? That counts the playoffs. Do you think Terance Mann will play a bigger role than Luke Kennard this season? take up my question in the comment section. And remember to keep commenting. I want to hear your feedback on my episodes. I always want constructive criticism. More guests will be rolling in as the season comes. I know you're probably sick of hearing just my voice, but maybe you're not. And if you're not, I appreciate it a lot. Especially all you guys that shout me out on Twitter and, the ones that see me in real life. Like, for example, yesterday, shout out to my guy that works for me at the Rams, if you're listening, came out and said, I listened to you. I really appreciate the love. Clipper Nation is the most generous fan base in the league. I know that from experience. It's not even close. So make sure you keep supporting your fellow Clipper fans and supporting Locked On Clippers. And, of course, my own YouTube channel, Dime Dropper, where I'm going to be live after basically every Clipper game, especially the home games. And, I mean, there are going to be some nights where I'm not live because I'm going to be doing Locked On, and that's going to come first in terms of putting out episodes. But raw, uncensored, right after the game, raw emotion. Clipper fans, tune in to me on Dime Dropper after the games. And I'm going to be releasing content on other teams. Like, I go live after Laker games just to give the unbiased Clipper view of things, but I obviously don't want them to win. But yeah, check that out as well. And of course, Clipper vlogs. Will I see you at opening night? If you're at opening night, holler at me in the Twitter DMs or on Instagram. I want to catch up and meet my subscribers, meet my listeners. I'm going to be there. Never feel afraid to just come up and say hi because I love interacting with the fans. You can be in the Clipper in my vlog. So check that out. Tonight I'm going to be going live on YouTube to talk about my standings prediction, 1 through 15, every single team. So see where the Clippers fall. I think you might have a guess of where they're going to fall for me with my insane bias, but check it out nonetheless. Anyways, have a good day, everybody. Remember the age-old proverb, go Clippers.